So as I told someone in the back, this sermon is for me. If it helps the rest of you, I hope it does. I'm going to mostly focus on the gospel, but I think that I was also very much taken by the Old Testament lesson, which is the prediction of desolation. That Isaiah is given the message to go and tell people who won't listen, won't observe, won't look, won't act, want to pretend everything is just hunky-dory. I'm not feeling that way. I'm not feeling that way for a lot of different reasons, but I also think that we have an opportunity to hold fast to our faith, to hold fast to the faith that God has an ultimate purpose and that in the end, all will be well. And I do that from a perspective of having had some rough patches with my previous parish. Let me just be honest, there were a couple of people on the vestry, one in particular, who wanted to get rid of me. Couldn't really pinpoint what I was doing wrong, but did everything in her power to persuade the vestry that somehow I was incompetent or that I was not doing my job. And it was a rough patch for a while. And I was actually tempted to leave. And I had a couple people say to me, one, don't leave until you have another job, because it is not a good thing to try to find a job if you don't have a job. And the other was somebody who said, you're the rector, and you know you haven't done anything wrong. Don't let them push you out. And in that process, most of which happened without the congregation knowing what was going on, the one or a couple of things that I kind of held on to, one was I still felt called by God to be in that place. And I knew that God loved me and that it was all going to be okay in the end, even if it was really awful at the time. What I think that the disciples, what Simon Peter and James and John were looking at when they were not being successful fishing was maybe some questions about what they were supposed to be doing. They were willing to follow Jesus's attempt to have them catch something. And then when they caught fish, and this was something that I read in somebody else, this is from somebody else, is that the thing that's interesting is the boats were sinking and the nets were breaking. They had so much fish, the nets were breaking and the boats were sinking. Looks like things are going, it looks like a great catch, but look at what's happening. A great catch isn't a great catch if you don't know what to do with it or if it sinks your boat. And then Jesus says, I got a different task for you. Maybe they were willing to leave their boats and their nets because they didn't know what to do with them after they weren't in such great condition. Or it would take a lot to repair. Or maybe there was something about what Jesus had said and what he was calling them to that was more attractive. What I can say about my situation in my parish was the difficulty was painful, and it ended up being painful for everyone. But in the end, what it did was give us an opportunity, me in particular, an opportunity to rethink where we had been and what had gone wrong and what was broken. And sort of, but not quite, reinvent our relationship, repair our relationship, improve the relationship, and things got a whole lot better really pretty quickly. However you view what's going on in our country today, we're in a divided country. We have a power struggle, and some people are really happy with where things are now, and others are really disturbed. I don't know exactly how it's all going to turn out, but I think that there are things that we can hold on to and need to hold on to as those who have faith in Jesus Christ. One, whatever the difficulties are that we're going to be facing and that we continue to face, they're temporary. And in the end, it will be good. In the end, it will be fine. There will likely be a lot of angst and pain and other things in between. The other is that we have work to do with that faith. We have been called and will continue to be called to action. And some of that action is, or maybe even most of that action, is to stay true to the values that we know Jesus preached. To the values and to the mission that Jesus walked, which was inclusion, it was healing, it was loving, it was taking care of the poor and those who were oppressed. The last time I was here, Jesus said, I came to give good news, to bring good news. We still have that message. Maybe how we've been doing it in the past hasn't worked so well. Maybe we've gotten complacent. Maybe we need to rethink our positions and how we proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ. Personally, I'm a little appalled by the anti-Christian persecution office that has now been started in the executive branch, because I do wonder what the definition of Christian that they're talking about. I don't walk around feeling particularly persecuted, even with a collar on. And I worry about those who are not believers. Because what I see being portrayed is something that is antithetical, in my understanding, to Jesus' message of love, of inclusion, of care, of justice and mercy. So I'm holding on to that faith in Jesus, that commandment to love, even those I violently disagree with, to hope for the best for all of us, and to work for that best, even for the misguided, even for those who are determined to be destructive. It's harder to love those folks. But I do want to remind you, Jesus said we were supposed to love our enemies. That doesn't mean agreeing with them. It doesn't mean saying anything you do is fine. It means praying that their minds get changed, that their ears get opened, their eyes get opened, that they begin to understand that there's another way. And it means doing what I can today, tomorrow, the next day, to hold on to and continue to act on my belief that I am loved, that everyone and everything that God has created is to God's glory, and that sin can be redeemed. It can be overcome, and in the end has already been. The war's been won. The skirmishes keep going. And sometimes they seem like more than just skirmishes. But we have that. And that's why we gather together to encourage each other, to keep on doing what we can in our location to love the world, to love God's creation. And for me, to love is to will the best for it. Not the worst, but the best. For you, for me, for the people we disagree with, for the people that we don't understand, for the people who we are afraid of, we can still love them. It's not a fuzzy, warm feeling. Let me tell you, it is not a fuzzy, warm feeling. But it is a decision and an act of the will to not call for retribution. So one of the people involved in the attempted coup of my parish lost her husband tragically. I never would have wished that on her as much as I really objected to what she tried to do to me. I wouldn't wish it on her kids. I was sorry that it happened. And I hope that in the end, I'm able to continue to do that kind of loving. I'm not sure I've entirely forgiven her, to be honest. But I have continued to try to hope for the best for her. And that's all that I think God asks of us. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask us to keep proclaiming and to keep loving. But as again, in one of his parables, Jesus said, it's really easy to love the people who love you back. It's much harder to love the people who wish you ill. But that's what we're called to do. May God give us the strength and the will to do that. Amen.